welcome to an apple a day with Dr. Amanda. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. Have a seat or have a listen. And today's theme is talking about infertility and really in terms of motherhood. And so if you're listening, like, share, or subscribe and tell a friend. So today I am delighted to have my friend and colleague, Beth Custer. And Beth Custer is a mom who works in the field of education. So welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for being here. I'm so glad that you're here. And so Beth, I just wanted to talk, I know there's so many different parts of your history, in terms of work and education, things that you've done. And I know that motherhood is such an important part of your journey. And so I just wanted to ask you, when did your process with infertility begin?
So it's a good question. It's kind of hard to answer because it turns out that I was infertile, but I didn't know I was infertile. So my husband and I had spent a lot of time going for advanced education degrees. We were a little bit older when we got married. We were a little bit older when we started trying to conceive. And we actually did start trying to conceive sooner than we thought we would. We had a whole plan. We had it. This is the year we'll try. This is when it'll happen. It turns out we decided to try sooner. And I want to share that story just because it was kind of cute. We had gone to a carnival and I just really had it in my head that I wanted to win one of those goldfish. You throw the ping pong ball in the cup and you get the goldfish. And I just kept trying and trying and trying to win this goldfish. And I couldn't win. And on the way home from the carnival, I was crying to my husband that I didn't win this goldfish. I really wanted this goldfish. And I told him the next day I was getting up and I was going to the pet store and I was getting goldfish in the aquarium and the whole thing. And he was like, listen, sit down. He's like, babe, you don't want a fish, you want a baby. And we can start trying. And I remember as soon as he said that, I just started crying. I was like, oh my God, he's right. I had no idea. I really thought I wanted a fish, but as soon as the words came out of his mouth, I was crying. I realized he was right. And so we started trying at that time. And I had been someone who had been on birth control, for a very long time. I started out as a teenager, mostly to help with my hormone imbalance, but I had remained on birth control for, it was like going on 20 years at that point. So getting ready, talking to my doctor about having a baby, we're still young and healthy people. So we started trying, and I was like a really diligent, trying person. I was counting my ovulation, doing the little ovulation sticks that you can buy. I think it was like Clearview brand or something. And so it would tell you when to try. We were doing all of these things, and it just, every month, it just wasn't happening. And so after about a year of this, we were like, we should just go see someone and just find out if there was an issue. Most people, I think, I forget the statistic now, but most people can get pregnant within a year of trying. So we were like, okay, it hasn't happened. It's time. So we went and they ran all the tests for me. They ran all the tests for my husband, and they were like, we can't figure out a reason, but you're infertile, undefined. So we decided at that point to start the process. So what they did for us was doing some artificial insemination first, which included, coming in every few days, checking the growth of my eggs, getting medication to help the eggs grow, getting medication to help the eggs drop, getting the semen specimen and getting that ready, and then sort of injecting the sperm at the eggs, like, let's go. So luckily that process did work for us. We didn't need to move on to in vitro, but it was a really involved process and something that, it took a lot of time. And I remember just feeling overwhelmed by how much time I needed to spend in the doctor's office every week, being there, coming home. So it was a really big time commitment and an added stressor, of course, to all the other things we were going on. So, and also not knowing if it would work. So.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing, especially, I like how you started out just with that, going to a carnival, having, trying to get a fish. And I love that, even your husband could pick up on, like you want a baby, right? Like you're ready.
I was
And
ready.
then you being able to be like, oh my gosh, and just having that moment. I love that.
Yeah, it wasn't, we weren't
Yeah.
supposed to start trying for another
Yeah.
like year or two. That was the plan. And I'm a big rule follower. We talked about it, we agreed.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even recognize it in
Yeah.
myself.
But it's interesting how, he kind of knew, and he knew that you kind of were ready. And perhaps, a lot of times plans are thrown out the window, right? Because, it's like we have a plan, but there's sometimes that, a greater plan than we have, than we are. So I love that, but even you realizing then having that, and then also, then having to go through that process, of being like, oh my goodness, like here we are and we're trying this, and then these results. And I just wanted to ask, and this is maybe alluding to what I was going to ask you is, what is the hardest pain of going through infertility, and how did you feel during when you heard the news from the doctor, we don't know why, but there's infertility? Like, what did that look like for you?
I was, taking a step back, going month to month and getting my period every month was very traumatic, because I think when you're trying to get pregnant, and I'm so glad, thank you for letting us talk about this, because I really wanted to, since I feel like people don't talk about it enough. It seems like some sort of taboo subject that I would love people to just feel comfortable talking about. But, you kind of convince yourself that you are pregnant. You're like, wait a minute, are my boobs more sore this month? Yeah, I think they are. You get it in your head that, yeah, you are pregnant, because you're doing all the things that you think you're supposed to do on the right days. And then you get your period, and I would cry every month. And then finding out that they had labeled me as infertile was just shocking, because, it was never even a thought that crossed my mind. I thought, oh my gosh, like, how can I be infertile? You feel like you're one of your main jobs as a woman, that society pushes on you, is you have children. And so I really wanted to do that, and being told like, you can't. It was shocking. It was very painful. But luckily they kind of were like, these are the things to try. So we kind of moved through that right into the hope of trying different things. So, but yeah, it's definitely something that was dramatic and difficult to deal with in the moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And yet it is a really hard topic. And again, on here, I really want to talk, and even in the audience, maybe there's some people that, have gone through this and, heard infertility and being able to have babies, just like your mom, or, something happens where they switch and then they can have babies. Or maybe you're like still in the process and you can relate to Beth, right? Having to deal with the feelings of every month, oh my gosh, here I am hoping that I'm pregnant, or am I more sore? And then having that almost disappointment, of not having that. So thank you, Beth, for sharing that, because that can be hard. And if you're in the audience, just, hopefully having hope and knowing that there's other people's stories, and perhaps we don't share about it. And, it shouldn't be a thing of shame. I think, unfortunately, I don't know if you agree, Beth, but sometimes people, again, still shame people who are going through things that you can't even help at the moment, like, that you want something and it's not happening. So if you're in the audience, know that there is hope, and again, you'll hear Beth's story and know that other people have gone through this. So Beth, in terms of infertility, what are some facts, or maybe you do know some facts, or maybe you have some background on fertility, in terms of like helping the audience understand, what does that look like? Like, are there some causes? I know yours, they said perhaps wasn't a known cause, but do you know of any known causes for infertility?
Yeah, and I think this is still an area that they're trying to figure out a lot of things, but they of course put this age limit. As soon as you're approaching the age of 35, the term is actually geriatric. They label you a geriatric mom if you're 35 or older, which is kind of crazy. Statistics, as you're getting older, your fertility gets less. The percentage of having a birth on your own decreases as you get older. People going through the artificial insemination process, they said on average a person takes 6 tries for it to work. When they're talking about in vitro, I think the number was, 30% chance each time. And that would be, they're putting in 2 or 3 eggs, fertilized eggs. So it's just the numbers that they tell you are just so, it's frustrating and overwhelming. You're like, oh my gosh, here I am. And now the chances of having this child just seem so low. The costs can be kind of overwhelming. I've had a few friends who've gone through the in vitro process. It's very expensive. It's very time consuming. So even when you're going through it, it's still kind of bleak and stressful. So
Well, thank you. It is good to know again, there are, as we all know that sometimes with age, but I also want to say, you can attest to this, and I've had friends that, again, sometimes those labels are even saying, oh, this is the age. And again, like our body does change, but just looking even now, I mean, there is hope. A lot of us as women may have kids older.
absolutely.
However, it's possible, and even just thinking about, some of your friends, like some of my friends, even if you're aging, again, there is hope. So if you're out there, because again, yes, those
Absolutely.
facts, but a lot of times I've seen even past facts, amazing things happen with our bodies, and what I believe, even in the area of babies or however that looks, if that's something you desire, and that's something that it'll come. And again, it may not look like what you think, but it will come. So I don't know. I just, Beth, thank you for sharing about that. And then again, like when you were in that infertility, what were some experiences from this that has shaped you? Again, like I know you're passionate about like sharing this today, and obviously it has impacted your life, but what would you tell to people that are going through the process right now?
I would say you are not alone. And this is not shameful. This is something that I don't know the reason why people don't want to talk about it. It's personal. But there are so many people that are experiencing this
Mm.
in so many different ways. And it's not something that people should feel ashamed about. It's not something that people should look back and say, oh gosh, I should have done all these things differently. Your life path has brought you to this place. And when you're ready, you're ready. Even if it's sooner than you thought or later than you thought, when you're ready, you're ready. And there's treatment available, and there's plenty of support. There are more women than not that are dealing with these things. And not to be sad when you see your friends having babies on Facebook and social media, because people are posting the nice, happy version. They're not saying all the struggles in that way. So, I know a lot of people say it's very depressing when they would go and see everyone else and it made it look so easy. And it's not. So not to be hard on yourself, and it can work out.
Good. And I like that you said for the audience to know that they're not alone. And hopefully if you are in the audience, you feel alone, we love you and we're rooting for you. And I hope that you have safe people in your life that you can talk with, hopefully family or hopefully friends or people that can understand what you're going through. And maybe they don't understand, but they can listen. Some good friends, right, that are listeners and some good support for you. And, I appreciate, Beth, that's impacted you and you're passionate about helping other people know that there's no shame with this, that our bodies all are a little different. And, again, it can seem like really hard, but I do like that there is always some hope, that we want to give you hope out there. So thank you. And then just thinking about, again, I know you've mentioned a lot of wisdom tips. For any other tips for people going through the pain, I know you said they're not alone, but again, like if there's anything else that really helped you during your really hardest days with this.
Just being able to communicate that with your people that you've chosen, if it's your significant other or if it's your best friend, have that person that you can talk to about it ongoingly, and that person that you would feel would support you without judgment. I think that really makes a huge difference. Just, I know it leads off of what we already said, but you're not an island. You don't have to deal with it alone. And if you find that person that will support you unconditionally, it just makes such a world of difference to be able to talk about it and express how you're feeling and cry to someone who lets you know that it's okay. I think it's really important to do that and not keep it bottled up.
Yeah, that's really good. And I like how you talked about, not bottling it up and having those safe people to be able to process it with. And people may not even know, that background, that story, that you went through. I don't know, maybe we have, I've known you, but like talk about it, but I don't think in depth have we talked about it, but really knowing like, here's this process I went through. and the pain, and knowing that you have other support. I think support is huge, no matter what you're going through, someone that's not going to judge you, but listen to you and love you. And that really, sometimes it's hard to find. So thank you. And we talked about some people that are going through that, but even families, like I know obviously, and I guess I can just piggyback, once you found out that you were pregnant, how did you feel? Like, were there mixed emotions? Because I know you said, oh, I kept hoping I was pregnant, but like the moment that you're like, I'm pregnant, and then you had this test, like what happened?
I remember it very vividly because I had to call and get the results after my fertility treatment. And so I called, and the nurse that I talked to said, oh, hold on a second. I was like, oh no, this is bad news. I was like, I was preparing myself. And then someone got on the phone and they were like, Beth. And I was like, oh, I knew right away by the tone of their voice. She was like, I don't need to wait for the doctor to tell you. Congratulations. And I don't know, my husband was videotaping it. I went, oh, and I like made some weird unnatural sound and I like jumped out of my chair. And I just remember being like, oh, thank God.
Oh, yeah.
I was so ready. But then, you get all of the other things like, oh my gosh, I hope that this child stays with me. I hope I don't lose this child. Like all of those emotions immediately start happening. So there's just a lot of stress, really.
Yeah. So you had that excitement, and then, oh my God, the range.
It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. And then the fear also.
Yeah.
So
I think that probably is normal, right? Like being so excited at this gift that you were given, at the right time, and that also then be like, oh my gosh, like that you waited, and it's such a hard process. And here's the promise, here's this gift, and you're so excited, and yet you're like, I want to keep it, like. And so how did, afterwards, again, how long did you have, I'm just curious, those emotions where, you were delighted, but, the rest of the pregnancy, like how were you as a mom who had infertility and then had this?
I worried constantly. And even after my daughter was born, I think, there's kind of the joke, if you're a mom, you worry. It just like is immediate. So I tend to be a worrier. So maybe it's not the same experience for everybody, but I was just so worried constantly. Like if the baby, even when I was, 9 months pregnant, if she wasn't moving enough, I'd be like tapping my belly, like, come on, baby, come on. I was constantly worried at any moment that we could lose her. And then even in her first year of life, because they give you threatening statistics about sudden infant death syndrome. This isn't the positive moment that I wanted to have, but yeah, it was beautiful moment. And then it soon turned into just worrying about my daughter and could I keep her? That feeling of now I have her, I need to keep her. So that stayed with me for a really long time.
Sure. And I know it's, not as positive, but I think realness of that, because, even as moms, obviously when you're wanting the baby, right. But these are the real emotions that might come up, as you're going through this, Beth. So I appreciate it, because even moms or people who have perhaps overcome, while you had the news and then going through it, but, just that understanding of motherhood, where you want, everything to go pretty smoothly and you wanted this. So I appreciate, you sharing that even in the audience that, normally as human beings, you might be nervous. Obviously the fruits of it are you have your daughter now, which is really exciting, but it's just such I don't know. I mean, I wonder sometimes, like when we wait for things, you appreciate it so much more. Not that you don't before, but just being like, oh my gosh, here's my daughter, and that thankfulness. So thank you for sharing all of that, Beth. Audience, again, your story may look different, but you might have these same emotions. And I think it's so important for us to connect on how we're feeling, or like thinking during it. And then because other people are going through the same thing, so you don't have to feel alone. Thinking about all of this and, motherhood and everything else that this process has brought you to, what would you want the audience to take away? Like, what would be your wisdom tip for the audience in the area of going through, like if you have mothers who haven't had, they're trying, people who perhaps are nervous about infertility, people that are currently in the process of trying to have a baby, or people that heard the news like you did, like, oh, we don't know why, or people are working on it, or even an in vitro. Like, what would you say to them today?
I would say don't feel ashamed. There's nothing to be ashamed about. And there might be people in your life, maybe it's a family member or someone you know that somehow makes you feel like it's a shameful thing, but there's no reason to be ashamed. It's not something you chose. You're doing the best you can, and find those people who make you feel supported and talk to those people and keep the other people out of the loop. It's your journey. So you don't have to tell everyone what you're going through, but choose the right people to tell and let them support you through it.
Thank you. So that is good. And that is helpful again, audience. And thank you, Beth, for that wisdom tip. If you're going through this, like Beth said, have safe people. And again, they be different people, but people that in this time of your life. Now, you might have a whole bunch of people in your life, but that there's certain people that, again, choosing wisely, like who can I share this with, and then eventually maybe you do share the story. Maybe Beth, you have some people who didn't know your whole story, but know you, but now you're sharing it, and it's at the right time, right? Like during that time, your mental health or your emotional health, was really important. So I like that, not being ashamed and like working through that shame, because a lot of times there can be societal shame or, all kinds of stuff that I feel like in society we have. Thank you. That's really important. So in terms of anything else about your journey, is there anything else in terms of infertility or anything that I may have missed about this topic that you wanted to get across to the audience?
No, I think the thing I wanted to get across is just having the opportunity to talk about it and not be ashamed and not be afraid and knowing you're not alone. So just having this be a topic that we can talk about is what I want people to have. Everyone's story is absolutely different. I'm not saying my story is better or worse. It's just mine. And so I don't want to feel sad or ashamed. And I don't want other people to feel that way too. I just want people to feel that that it's happening in the world. It's happening very regularly, and people don't talk about it for whatever reason. So just feeling the comfort that they're not alone and there is hope, and there are lots of ways that you can make your heart full. So.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you. Yeah, and I like that because again, you're a voice to say, you're now that you've overcome or you've gone through this, you can really shine some light for other people, be able to speak about it. This may have been your first time sharing this a larger audience, and that's really brave. So glad that you're willing to share, Beth, and to own your story with this. And hopefully in the audience, if you are struggling to share with people, or maybe you went through this, it is helpful. It's helpful to know, what we go through on the journey or have other people learn more about infertility, and that, it's not a shameful thing, and that there is hope, and that there are things that can come from it that are good. So thank you, Beth, so much for your time. Now, Beth, is there any way, and I guess I just want to ask you, do you have like any type of contact, like if there would be women that have gone through this, is there some type of way for them to get in contact with you that you'd be comfortable sharing?
Yeah, they can certainly give me an email, and my email is bethacuster, CUSTER @gmail.com. I'm happy to chat with anybody who would like to.
Okay, great. So what I'll do is, it's on the, again, if you're listening podcasts, I'll list it. And then in the YouTube description, I'll list Beth's email, so that if you had any other questions and, or, you wanted to get in contact with her because you have a similar story or just really were impacted this day, I'd love for you to get in contact and thank Beth for this. So again, audience, I hope that I've learned a lot, hopefully some wisdom, more wisdom, I think, than our daily dose from Beth. And I appreciate so much you being here. So audience, if you like this, share, subscribe to YouTube. Again, this will also be on podcast. It's 5 days a week. Would love to hear your voices. And Beth, I'm sure, knows that she has many different hats and lots of talents. So I'm sure if she would like to, at some point, I'd like to have her back because she has different topics in education and lots of different stories to share. So again, thank you so much, Beth, for your time. And take care, everybody. Have a great week. We're proud of you. You're amazing. And always know there's hope for you.